We'll reconvene the meeting from last Tuesday. I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Bell?
Here.
Trustee Brewer? Here. Trustee Grant?
Yes.
Trustee Jazinski?
Here.
Trustee Todd?
Here.
Trustee Williams?
Here. Okay, when I'm reading here, this is what I have a problem with. Is there going to be any discussion on this new budget that was proposed to us? So, to just approve an ordinance, approving the appropriations in the budget, and not actually get a chance to go through it, I don't think it's feasible to do. I think we need to look at a few things, because there's some questions that I have before we actually vote on something that some people probably saw for the first time. Nothing's been changed.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in agreement with you that the information that's provided is not what we, what's out there to be voted on, and it should be looked at and, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And it should be looked at, because I understand there was some changes made to the budget, and I'm not aware of those changes, but somebody told me, you know, I'm just going by here, say, and now there's another appropriations out here, put this out here again on the same thing we had last week. There's no dollar amount here. We don't know what we're voting on, so I find this a little, we need additional information in order to get past the budget. So there has been some revisions made, and we'd like to incorporate them into the new to the budget dated 9/5/2019.
Okay, that being said, my next question is who's going to answer the questions that may come forth? Is there anybody on the board that can answer the questions for the revised budget?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I sent several messages to the village administrator and also to Mr. Finch, and they haven't responded as of yet. So, of course, we don't know the answers to them. So, unless they show up and tell us what's going on, there's nothing we can really do.
Yeah, okay, so, no, trustee,
I'm sorry.
the budget that I have, that I see here, is different than the one that was at the front desk. The one that you're referring to is the one on September 5th.
Okay.
So, and I looked at that one and I saw this one, and they're entirely different because there's some things on here that kind of questionable as far as money. My main question is where we're pulling this money from to come up with this increase. The increase was $1 amount, now it's $500,000 more than what was at the front desk. So, and I think I see where it's at, but like I said again, who is going to be able to answer these questions? That's the part I'm looking at. So we can go back and forth and talk, but I'm looking at trying to find out where can we get these answers.
Well, I mean, my position is just put it out there and find out what changes that.
But who's going to be able to answer the
and
questions?
whoever made the changes can answer and they can tell us what they were thinking, and then we, this is discussion, right? This period.
Okay, does any other trustee have any other remedy to this? Because there's, like I said, there's a few things. So me asking these questions, am I going to get an answer, or is it just going to lay dormant and nothing being said. So that's the part I'm asking. Who is going to be able to answer the questions of the augmented budget?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Trustee Williams.
I did attempt to put the discussion of the budget on the committee meeting agenda so we could discuss it at that time. So since that was not done, I suggest that at your direction, we do have to come together and discuss the budget. As far as the $500,000 worth of changes from the original budget, you and everybody knows that things were added, such as the Osland grant and other things that needed to be added from the beginning. There's been several changes. I did try to get it on the committee agenda, and that was a fail. So I would like to know, what do you suggest? When should we come together again?
My suggestion would be, first of all, my question would be to be able to, when we ask questions, answer one intelligently and who also knows what the answers are, to be present. I don't know who that person is. That's my first thought, because I don't know who that is. I don't know where the numbers came from. Okay, fine, they're here. You stated that it was Osland grant. Okay, that's one, but I'm looking at one budget from the 5th of September, then this one here is $534,000 more. And I see where I'm thinking that it's coming from, and it said reserve. I'm hoping that they're not talking about the line of credit. So I'm hoping that that's not the answer. But as I said, unless someone comes up with a reasonable answer, that in itself, if we get a line, that's like a line of credit, like a credit card. You spend all your money now, what happens when you do have a problem? So those are some of the questions that I have, but there are others too. So I'll ask the board, do you want to have a meeting? I mean, things are going on now, and have someone, whoever came up with this, because I don't even know who came up with the changes. And so whoever came up with the changes can explain those changes to the board and to the residents at whatever time that they can be available, and we can call that meeting for that particular time to go over the items that were changed, and hopefully we get some answers. I'm asking the board that right now, and I think that would be more proactive than to try to fumble through this and really not have a clear-cut answer.
Mr. Mayor, do we not have a finance director anymore?
We never had a finance director. He was an interim. Did he make the changes? That's what I'm asking. I don't know. If he made the changes, then you could definitely have him there.
There's only $1,700 worth of changes to the budget of September 5th that you approved as being willing to approve the September 5th budget.
How much?
$1,700.
No, trustee, it's 500 because we went from 660,000 of a money that we had to infuse the budget to 1.1 million. So that's 500,000. So, and that's the reason I'm asking. It went from 660,000 to 1.1 million now. So
I'd like to know, I think you're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. We need to do something about that. What do you suggest we do?
I asked that somebody tell us, whoever, I still don't know who made this up, so whoever did make it up, that we come together and you said, Mr. Finch, I don't think Mr. Finch's budget was put on the front desk on September 9th. September 5th, 9/5. This is different. Has some, like I said, this has more money into it, added into it, and it's at different items. But to go over this is frugal if we don't have answers. We can talk numbers all day, but we can make numbers all day, but where are we going to get the money from? And those are some of the things I'm sure the residents want to know. So I'll ask again, is anyone, whoever helped put this together, can they get whoever it is that's going to speak on it to give a clear cut answer? So I'm just asking if there's anybody that's, whoever put this together, like I said, again, I don't know who did it.
Mr. Mayor, whoever, I don't know, well, whoever put it together, Mr. Finch couldn't look at it until I heard that, some changes were made on, Saturday. Trustee Williams and Trustee Grant made some changes, so Mr. Finch,
That was last.
Oh, last Saturday. So Mr. Finch wasn't available, as I understand, Mr. Finch was there, so he should be able to tell what's going on with this particular revised budget. He was there, I understand Mr. Village Administrator Williams was there too, so they should be able to
Okay,
tell.
I'm just,
I'm just
I
saying, all these
understand.
people were there and none of these.
the trustee, I asked as recent as today,
Mm.
and the both gentlemen that you stated said they had no input in this increase.
Both gentlemen.
Yes. They
The
said they had,
administrator said he had no input?
Can I ask you a quick?
and the increase,
What did, so where did you get this from? I need to put it in our boxes, I know, but who gave it to you? Oh, okay.
It was emailed from all 5 trustees.
Was,
We're talking,
Yes, we sent it, yes.
so if that's the case, then I think that the answers are, somebody up here should know the answers, because Mr. Finch, as far as I know, he didn't put this one together. He did put multiple versions together. So if he didn't put this one together and it came from the 5 trustees, I would hope that the 5 trustees or the village administrator or somebody can answer the questions. Because I did see the email one a couple days ago, and I guess I see there's some highlights in here too on the payroll tab that I want to ask as well. So who can address those questions?
as I said, I would like to probably wait, I mean, to keep going back and forth right now, doesn't make sense. Because
Mr. Mayor, this is the second week in a row. Because, I mean, this is a personal problem, but I have to be here at 6 o'clock, which means I have to leave early to get here. It's 2 weeks in a row to make a meeting that we talk about nothing. And I don't think it's fair, and again, it's just my problem, not anybody else's, but, I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. Somebody should have some answers and we can go over this. This is the second week in a row.
trustee, I don't know
Mr.
what to
Mayor, I'm
say.
in agreement with Trustee Grant that Mr. Finch should be here to answer these questions. I think he was available to whoever made the changes up. And the trustees, it came from the trustees, but Mr. Finch was here. He should be able to tell us what the intent was. So, I mean, the appropriation is there. It has no dollar amount. We can't really do anything unless Mr. Finch comes here and tells us. But he's trying to tell us, because there's been about 6 or 7 versions. I showed them to you in the
Yeah, but
office.
here's
So-
the thing, trustee,
Uh-huh.
I asked Mr. Finch, and he said he had nothing to do with this last version. So I don't know, he had nothing to do, because I asked him about these numbers, where they come from. He said he doesn't know who made this, he don't know if it was mistakes or double or whatever, because I asked him about some of the things in payroll, I asked him about some of the other things. Who added more money to professional services, who took away, I mean, I asked him about that, and the last thing I talked to both gentlemen, Mr. Finch and Mr. Williams, that they're not doing, they've been back and forth so many different times. So they're not, as a matter of fact, they said they're not gonna, what was presented on the 5th was what they stood by. This has changed since then, and neither one of those gentlemen had anything to do with that. So I don't know how we're gonna find out who added these and what's the reason. How know if the gentleman we're talking about can answer those questions? But Mr. Williams is right here right now, so I don't know.
Well, I just want to answer some questions that I know the increase occurred.
Please use a mic.
I don't know.
Somebody get him a mic.
But not all of them, because I know what version you all are looking at. It has some marked changes.
There you go.
But I was just basic, some major ones that they had significant increase, I was commenting on after that.
No, the question was, sir, did you have any,
The September 5th version, the one that since Madam Clerk,
yeah?
that was edited, that's the only one that I have.
Okay, so you had no input in this?
So is that this one or no?
No, that's not this one. No,
This is.
this is not September 5th.
No, that's one of the things that.
Right.
Oh, that was dated with edit with the dates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
September
that's the
16th.
proper one.
Did
That's
you-
the same one. It's just that the dates were changed on it.
This is not the same one that's September 5th.
Well, I'm just gonna speak on some of the increases that I know did occur, between Mr. Finch and I and the whole, corporate authorities. I know we have a couple of things we have to account for in this budget. We have one Osland grant that we have to pay back, so that's an, increase of $100,000 plus dollars. So that gave to that. We also accounted for the contractual obligations we're entering in right now, with Public Works and Police as a retro, at a certain, percentage. It's not guaranteed that they'll get that, but we just budgeted for accordingly. So those are some of the biggest increases in there right now that we can account for. Other than that, anything outside that scope, there's been maybe some modifications as it relates to personnel. There's also been an increase as it relates to legal fees, because unfortunately, we've went over it more than expected. But those are the major increases that have led to an increase in the budget that was originally proposed before I came here to the one that's now. There might be some more things in there, but those are the things I can say definitely that I was involved in as it relates to the negotiation back and forth with the board, the mayor, and internally as an operations. So that's what I'll speak on.
Again, my question is,
So,
are you available to answer, are you gonna be able to answer all the increase?
I'm not going to answer all of them because once again, there's been some things that's been changed, and I defer to Mr. Finch on that on some
Okay,
things.
let me ask you this, did Mr. Finch, I got mine. Then I just wanted to know the increases that were put in here. Were you or Mr. Finch involved in those increases?
I think if you could specify which increases are you referencing.
$521,468 administration fee.
Are you doing an aggregate of the total of everything?
No, I'm asking you to do that particular one because it wasn't in the last one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Are you doing an aggregate?
No,
An aggregate of
I'm asking-
all the administration?
I'm asking transfers.
Oh, yeah, it was a deficit operating. That's the reality is that the past couple budgets have been operating from a deficit.
I understand that, sir. The last deficit was one thing. This particular one increased by $521,000.
And that's what I was saying. One of the increases were related to,
Okay, so who came up with the idea and where are we gonna transfer the money from?
so to answer your question about some of the increase, that's what I was saying. One of the increases relating to what the first budget that you all, I guess, began discussion a while back, the Osmond grant was not accounted for that. That's something that came more recently because the state said we want our money back because we can't properly account for it. So that's one increase.
My question, sir. Here, hold on.
I am answering questions, sir.
Hold on. My question was, there's a difference of $521,000.
Yes.
Okay, did you input that in there? Because it wasn't in the September 5th one.
No, sir. That was accounted for in the September 5th version. Because once I'm trying to communicate, you're talking in aggregate, the total of the deficit that occurs. If we start breaking down this aggregate as to some of the totals, one of the totals that was added was the Osmond grant. That contributes to that total deficit. We just received information that we have to account for that from the state. Another thing that we accounted for, even if we talked about in executive session, was the union contract, which was not previously accounted for in the earlier version. And then that's another one. Then it's also some salary, personnel increases. Those are the major things that were added that I worked with you all to account for outside of that scope. But then again, that deals with the total. If you break down those three things, those are contributing large chunks to that $500,000 deficit.
Okay, and that's what I'm, see, we're getting these answers.
Well, I'm giving you what I was involved in, sir.
That's what I didn't want to happen because basically he's still not answering the question. Because we went from one figure to another and the increase was $500,000. I was asking, were you part of that adding to that deficit from the 5th budget to the one that we got submitted on the 16th.
Yes, sir. I was saying the amounts that I did contribute to in that increase. And that's what I was saying. Those are 3 big chunks that we increased because this came on something we have to address. The 3% retro for our 2 unions that were in contract negotiation, and then also the odds and grants. Those are the big chunks that added to that $500,000 deficit.
So again, will you be able to answer these questions that I asked? That's my first question. Will you be able to answer these questions that I asked about this budget? Who's going to be able to answer the question?
Well, those are the 3 that I'll be comfortable with answering, sir. After that, I'm going to defer to the,
To who?
what you said? I mentioned 4. Oh, there was some, oh, yes, and the increase in legal fees, which was proposed by.
So we won't get all the answers right now.
Well, those are, I'm just addressing those aggregates that lead into that $500,000
So we
deficit.
won't get all the answers right now.
You know what? I answer to the best of my ability, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, the budget that was put out on 9/5 didn't include the union contracts, the Osler grant, personnel, and legal fees. So therefore, it had to be revised. That's not what I understand, right? And it was revised after the 5th.
What do you mean?
The-
What do you mean? Because I'm looking at something that was done twice in here for wages, just wages alone. And then, there were some other things that were added in here, and I'm trying to figure out how they get added. And I'm also trying to figure out how and why we're using reserve money to balance the budget. So those are the questions, those are just some of them. I'm looking at other things, but it doesn't make sense to ask questions you can't get answers. So, I mean, you know, it's a shame, as Trustee Grant said, that we're here the second time, and he had another week to get whoever it was that changed this to come and talk about what the changes are, where we're getting the money from, and all those type of things, and why would they change? I mean, those are the questions that I'm sure everyone here wants to know. If you increase something, then why did you increase it, and where are you pulling it from?
I asked that 2 weeks ago. I don't know what's real.
So,
Yeah,
I'm asking the board now, what's the pleasure of the board?
we need to get Mr. Finch in here and find out.
Is Mr. Finch the one, because he may give the same answer that Mr. Williams
Well,
just
he
gave.
gotta wait till he gets in.
You don't understand what I'm saying? If he doesn't have the answer, then where do we go? Someone made this budget up. So where do we go? If either one cannot answer the question, then it didn't fall out of the sky. Somebody put this on paper and they wrote it in.
I mean, we all got the email, from one trustee that said it was from all 5 trustees. So I just want, who put it together? I mean, it's simple.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
I'm gonna say again what I said earlier. I attempted to have the review of the 2019-2020 budget on the regular committee agenda so we could have gone through it in detail, line by line, and answered questions. That was refused. If we would have done that, we could have canceled, we could have, Madam
No.
Clerk, I'm speaking.
No.
I'm speaking. If we had done that and put it on the agenda for discussion, the proper people would have been here to discuss it, and this meeting could have been canceled, because obviously we do not have an appropriation figure. What everybody got by email this weekend was the September 5th budget. An email from you said that that was the only budget that you wanted presented. The trustees.
I said that this weekend?
I never said that.
Oh, you
I
just
said,
said
no,
you did?
if I did, I apologize.
Oh, okay,
I have
you
a
just
email.
said that I
I
said that.
said, and you sent an email that said the September 5th budget was the only budget that you wanted to have presented. What you got by email from my email address from the 5 trustees was the September 5th budget with only payroll changed in the amount of $1,700. All those other changes, that $500,000 worth of changes, those all came after the original budget that we started in June. Now, we could go through this again, item by item at your choice, Mr. Mayor, at the time that you choose. But we took the budget from September 5th that you said that you were satisfied with, and we made $1,700 worth of changes. And we had questions for that budget. We all know the budget is $500,000 over where we need to be. And we all, like I said, I met with Trustee Grant and Mr. Finch for several hours on September 7th, and everything we talked about was disregarded. Nobody told me it was going to be disregarded. Mr. Finch and Mr. Trustee Grant had a lot of, they had more changes. It got to the
Okay.
point where it was $775,000.
Don't say that.
At this point, I defer to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, this is what and I don't know where you get this from. First of all I asked was to have somebody here to explain the changes from the September 5th to September 16th. Also, September 5th overage was $640,000 that we were gonna pull from, I think it was coming from the water fund. Now that figure has increased to 1.1 million. So I'm asking to find out where that came from, who can answer those questions. So we can have as many meetings as you're talking about. If there's nobody here that can answer the question, we're gonna be doing what we're doing right now, sitting here looking at one another, trying to figure out, this one has part A, this one did part B, and this one did part C, and nobody really is giving answers. So to continue and to say that if you had it on the committee meeting, that the answers would have been answered, well, you have a meeting right now and you still don't have the answers answered. So to keep saying and pointing, and that's all we're doing is pointing fingers, but nothing getting done, then that's exactly what it is. The money is, somebody wrote this, which is different than the one in September 5th. Someone wrote this. All I'm trying to find out who's the author. Who authored that? Who brought this up? And can they explain it to me? Because there's more than just those few things you're talking about. Because there's a difference. And I saw the difference. But to go over it and to ask those questions is futile because no one can answer them. That's why I asked, can someone answer these questions? I did ask Mr. Finch. I did ask Mr. Williams about this, and both said it had nothing to do with this last one. This last one that came between September 5th and September 16th, they said they had nothing to do with that. Now you're saying that if we had had a committee meeting, we would have got the answers. Well, whoever that person is, whoever that person is that can answer these questions, where are they now? That's all I'm asking. Whoever this person is that knows, whoever produced this document, where they at? So I can find out, and I'm sure residents wants to know about certain things that are on here. It doesn't make sense to go over this. So
What document are you talking about?
I'm talking about this right here. This right here, this document right here that was presented to us. It says September 16th. Can somebody explain the differences in them?
I don't know the differences, but it seems like somebody put something in there after not September 5th, so who has access to these?
September 5th, you took copies of that. You took copies of September 5th.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
so, this is the first time I've ever seen this document.
Me too.
Oh, wait a minute, hold it. Hold it. Wait a minute. Hold it just a second, please. Hold it. You cannot sit up here and say this is the first time that you saw this document.
The one dated,
The one dated the 16th.
the 16th.
that was
No,
put in your
I had it
file.
on 16th, I'm sorry.
Pulled that on sales like yesterday.
Okay, so this is not the first time you saw it.
My mistake.
Somebody made this up. It wasn't me. So only thing instead of us going back and forth, round and round, I'll accept a motion. I'll accept, Madam Clerk, going back and forth, what's that gonna do?
It's not going back and forth because this has not been expressed yet, and I would just like this opportunity because this is the email, this is the budget that was sent. The only thing that I did when it was sent to me to ease your path, trustees and mayor, because in the past, as you look at the budget, you guys would flip through from one page to the other and not know which page you were looking at. Instead, you would say, oh, it's 2 pages after the other one. And was, I put the page numbers on it, I put the date on it so that you would know the most recent version you were looking at, and then for each section of the budget that you all before would stumble through, I labeled it as part 1, part 2, there are, I think, 20-something parts to this, which is your same budget. It's just that I thought that I was doing something that would be helpful to you.
Okay, that being said, we don't have a solution to what we're asking for right now.
Can I ask
So-
a question? Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The changes that I guess Trustee Williams alluded to for $1,700, like what were those? And
I don't
who
even-
made those changes?
I have no idea what
It's the
section.
same changes, if you want me to answer, Mr. Mayor, you want me to answer that?
Okay,
Okay,
okay, first of all, trustees, that's why I asked the question. Are you gonna pick this apart and still come back in the same square? Or are we going to wait until we can answer all the questions?
so wait,
Because if you pick it apart and then you don't have answers for everything, we sit here and do the same thing over and over and come back to the same circle, at the same starting point. So unless we have somebody that can sit here and be able to intelligently answer these questions, I don't see any reason for us to go forward with this meeting. That's why I was asking them, I'll take a motion to recess again.
Mr.
And I'll ask,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? So this budget here, since nobody know who did it, can we get rid of this one? And then the one that Mr. French submitted to us 2 weeks ago, submit that one and have him speak to it? Because if nobody can answer the questions, what's the point of passing it? You can't pass a budget, you can't answer questions. So if you get Mr. Finch here with the budget that he submitted, and we can vote on that one, I think that was more feasible than submitting this one, which we have no answers to.
okay, trustee, I understand you, I thought that was, okay, so, and I'm hearing no, okay. I'll be happy to call whatever meeting that you guys want to call with the person there to explain what it is you want to present and to go forth with that. Because going back and forth, right now, there's questions that cannot be answered. So how can you vote on something without questions that cannot be answered? Because there's some questions in here that I have that they weren't even brought up yet. It's not even about certain things, and some other things that I had the question about. So I'll defer to, since the board always calls, I'll defer to the board when they have someone here that can explain these add-ons, these infusions of more money, and where it's coming from, and how do you expect to pay it. Those are questions I want to know among some other ones. But to continue to keep this a second time, continue to keep doing this, and we have nobody, because nobody here on the board can explain all these questions. Yes, you may be able to explain one or two, what's that going to do? You still can't, it's still not going to affect the outcome of everything. So I'll wait. I'm sure the board can let me know when they have a person, someone came up with this. So whoever did or whoever came up with this can come forward and be able to explain the answers to the questions that are going to be asked about this. Then I'll accept the motion here to adjourn instead of reconvene another date. I'll accept the motion to adjourn. We still have a motion we have an ordinance on the records to continue to pay payroll and the bills versus what was going on from the last budget. So, unless you want to do that, make that it, but that's a lot less money. The last budget that we had this budget is much, much more. So if you want to pass last year's budget the way it was, then it's going to be a lot less than what this is. A lot less. So without that, but if you want to, and the board, I'll defer to the board whenever you guys are ready to have someone here to do that, then we can call a meeting at that time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I will more than likely make that motion to adjourn, because normally we shouldn't keep recessing this particular meeting. But my question is, I just want, before we adjourn, did you say that the budget of September 5th met with your approval? That's all I want to know.
Did I say what?
The budget of September 5th.
If I recollect, yes, I did.
Okay, that's all we need to know. So that's the budget we're gonna go with, along with the changes that were
Okay,
made
we
from
asked
the
you a
fire
question,
trustees.
along, say that.
That's what we were
Wait,
trying to do.
hold on. You can't have it both ways, trustee. You can't say we'll go with this budget along with, now you add it, so.
Mr. Mayor,
You
I
can't-
asked you, were you?
Yes, I
okay
said
with
yes,
the budget of
but
the
now,
board?
but you said.
Let her talk.
And then I said the trustees had,
Excuse me.
the trustees had recommendations on top of that budget. The trustees would like to be recognized.
I know.
The trustees' changes would like to be recognized. All we did was make nominal changes to the budget of September 5th. Now, we could definitely close this meeting out and come back together again and go over line by line if that's what you so choose. But the
But I so
person who
choose.
put the budget together of September 5th was not a trustee. It was somebody in the capacity that works in the finance department. Now, I know for a fact when Trustee Finch and myself, and Trustee Grant and Finch and myself sat there for hours on the 6th and the 7th, we went over every single item, and it was very clear that things were changed from the original budget that was first submitted. Had we passed that budget back in July when we first brought it up, or June when we first backed it up, we would have had 4 or 5 amendments since then. Things have happened. Now, we need to get a budget passed. The budget from September 5th was the one that you approved. The trustees had minor changes they were requesting. What you have in front of you is what the 5 trustees wanted to discuss.
Can anybody explain this? Can anybody explain this, trustee?
Sure, what do you need to know? It's highlighted,
Oh,
it's got questions.
so I asked that question. Can someone explain this on here and no one answered?
No, you said you wanted to explain where the $500,000 deficit.
That's
came
part
from,
of this.
How it was gonna get paid
That's
for.
part
Now
of
I can't
this.
explain.
That's part of this. You just can't write a check and hope money's in the bank.
The September 5th
So-
budget was used to make that document. To
So,
approve the September 5th. I do agree that we should make a motion to adjourn, and Mr. Mayor, at your discretion.
No, it's not my discretion. No, it's not my discretion.
so Mr. Mayor, before we make that motion, can I ask what are the changes, since you say that we do have them, and can you say what they are so we can write them down, so,
You're talking about the changes that the trustees sent over the weekend?
yes.
Yes, it's a 2% increase for the public works director and combining the mayor's assistant to a full-time, part-time village assistant that can assist the mayor, the clerk, and anybody who needs assistance. Those 2 things were done at a cost of $1,700. Now, $500,000, we're getting
At a cost of
responsible for
what,
that.
trustee?
The only increase from
No,
the
it wasn't,
September 5th
trustee.
budget.
No, it wasn't.
I make a motion, I
I'm-
agree, Mr. Mayor.
I'm
You made a
looking-
motion to
I'm
adjourn, I
looking-
made that motion. I think we
Wait a
should
minute,
move on.
look, first of all, trustee, hold on. You trustee, I'm
You made a
saying,
motion to adjourn.
I know, I said I asked, but I haven't accepted it. You said
Oh.
$1,700 was the difference. I'm looking at here $34,600. That's not $1,700.
No, Mr. Mayor, that is not so true. You're not looking at that correctly. The original budget had $25,000 for a part-time assistant and $9,600 for a mayoral assistant. And all we did was combine the
But
$25,000 and the $9,600.
you said it was 1,700.
The $1,700 is a 2% increase for a public works director.
No, you said it was a 1,700. First of all, if you read what you put in there, in the last budget, the increase was already put into the September 5th. Why'd you add another 2%?
The increase for, can you explain to me where it was put at? Because it wasn't on the payroll sheet.
It was already added in.
It wasn't clear on the payroll sheet. That was our question.
Okay.
Well, in that case, the budget of September 5th stands, except for the combining the 25,000 to the 9,600.
No, it doesn't stand because we got an increase of $500,000. So it's not, it doesn't
I don't know
stand.
where that came from.
Really?
September 5th budget stands.
Really? You don't know where it came from?
No. September 5th budget stands with combining the
Trustee,
two.
I know that you take it upon yourself to answer for everybody. I
You
understand.
asked me a question.
I understand that. However, you don't have all the answers, and some of this stuff that's in here, I want to know why it went from a deficit of $650,000 to 1.1 million.
Can I ask you the budget of September 5th, what was the deficit at that time?
650.
Okay, that's where we're at.
No, we're not. No, we're
Nobody
not.
else
This
has changed
budget
to my knowledge.
here, this budget here that you put here, or whoever put it,
Says
that you said you didn't do it, says $1.1 million.
Well, that,
Well,
we worked with the budget from September.
No, but the numbers don't lie, they're right here.
Okay, wonderful. Why don't we call another meeting and go over the budget again?
You think this is a joke.
No, I don't think it's a joke.
Yes, you do.
No, I do not think it's
I'll take it, go ahead.
This was the meeting.
This was supposed to have been the meeting.
But I mean, we're not getting
No, you're not, because there's nobody here that can answer the questions, which should have been, if that's not my responsibility to have someone here to explain something that I didn't put in. I had nothing to do with this.
The budget from September
You keep
5th
saying that.
is the budget that you approved.
You
The
keep saying
trustees
that.
had
I didn't
two
approve
corrections.
it. It wasn't voted on.
Nothing's been voted on.
Okay, then so say I approve it.
Mr. Mayor,
So do you have anything else?
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
yes,
we're not
ma'am.
going anywhere.
Okay, so do you-
But I need to ask a question though. When we get ready to, look at this thing again, we're looking at, funds for the union and also the legal fees. That's why we have an increase. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have no idea.
But-
I don't know.
Okay.
I see an increase, and the numbers that I added up does not add up to that 500,000. That's what I'm trying to say.
But wait a minute, Mr. Mayor, okay, I'm trying to understand, okay, what's going on here, okay? As I understand, the paper that you're looking at with the red letter on it includes the, information that the trustees wanted, the 2% increase and the combination of, two positions, okay, that was that. But I don't understand where the union and the legal fees came up, what was that change, when did that change?
From one time to another.
I
I have no idea. If you're asking me, I don't know.
Well,
This is all just mentioned in this meeting.
Now, I don't know where it came from, and that was one of the questions. It went from $220,000 to $275,000. There was a $50,000 increase in legal fees for the next budget. For what reason? That's what I was gonna ask. Those are some of the things I want to know.
Well, so I think, well, that one in particular, I requested that because, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Mayor, the month of, July, we had $34,000 in lawyer fees, legal fees. And so in the budget, it was $225,000. And so I asked that we increase that number because I already knew that we would probably pass that $200,000 number in the budget. So I think I asked to raise it to $300,000, but he actually only increased it to $275,000. So
trustee Brett
But
asked for
no.
raise?
No, and legal fees. And I think that was, we were all here, and we said at that meeting, and told the village administrator, I said, hey, I think we should increase legal fees because the month of July was $34,000 by itself for 1 month, and that's not enough for what was in the budget at that point in time. So we were all here, and I asked that the VA increase that.
To what?
I didn't give a number. I think I said $300,000, but I think obviously right here is $275,000.
Okay, well, maybe I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know either, I just think we should just have, it's too much.
Okay, well then
Everybody understands what.
I'll try this again. I'll accept the motion to adjourn
So moved.
this meeting. Not, and please don't get it, a mistake. This is not a reconvene or convene or we're going to, this is a motion to adjourn this meeting. The next meeting will have to be properly, notified and put out there. So there's a motion on the floor from trustee, Jazinski and second by trustee Todd to reconvene this. Pardon me?
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry, okay.
Anyway you want to adjourn this meeting, you can write it.
I'm sorry, I guess I don't want to make mistakes, but anyway. Trustee Todd and second by trustee Williams, any questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
So you agree with that?
Now, I want everybody to be on this one.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask
She's
one
on,
question?
no, she's coming all the roll.
But still not gonna give us any. I'm missing the stats, so you have to be patient.
Trustee Bell.
Yes.
Trustee Brewer.
Yes.
Trustee Grant.
Yes.
Trustee Jazinski. Trustee Todd.
Yes.
Trustee Williams.
Yes.
That's it? Okay, motion carried. Meeting is adjourned, we'll reconvene, well, we will have our regular meeting at 7 o'clock. I don't know if the tables are set that way, so I guess we have